All right, today we're going to be going over the Module 9 test review. Number 1 says an expression is given. An equivalent expression to the one shown above, ax squared plus bx plus c. Complete the sentence. In the equivalent expression, the value of a is blank and the value of c is blank. Okay, so we're going to take the expression that they gave us, we're going to simplify it, and we're going to figure out what our a is and what our c is. So first, I know I have two operations happening here. I have negative and positive. I'm going to start with what's happening with the negative. Remember that here there is a -1 that I have to distribute to everything in the parentheses right after. So I'm going to start with keeping the first parentheses. I'm going to drop the parentheses because I won't be needing them anymore. I'm going to distribute this -1 to everything. So -1 times 7 is -7, and -1 times 6x squared is -6x squared. And because this is positive, I'm just going to drop the second set of parentheses, bring back what I have. So positive 4x minus 10. And from here, we're just going to combine like terms. I go from highest degree to lowest degree. So if we notice, the x squared goes first because it's the highest degree. So I'm going to grab x squared and x squared. -1x squared minus 6x squared is -7x squared. Now I go with the -6x and the positive 4x, and that's going to give me -6 plus 4 is -2x, and finally -7 and -10 gives me -17. Now remember, when you're combining like terms, you do not add the exponent, so I should not have x to the fourth. When I'm adding and subtracting, I'm just adding the front number or subtracting the front numbers. So my value for A is going to be -7, and my value for C is going to be -17. Number 2, what is the simplified form of the polynomial expression shown below? So again, I have some terms right outside the parentheses. I know I'm going to be distributing everything in. Now when I distribute, I know that's multiplication. I can put my 1 here. Anytime I multiply, I'm going to multiply the big numbers, add the exponents. So here we have -2x times positive 1x is -2x squared. -2x times -3 is positive 6x. And then we go to our next term. -2 is going to be distributing with everything in its parentheses. Now remember, a negative times a negative is a positive. 2 times 1 is 2, and I keep my x squared. Then we have positive 2x and positive 8. And finally, my 7x is going to get distributed to everything. I've got positive 7x squared and positive 56x. All right, and now we can start combining like terms. Again, we go highest degree to lowest degree. So I'm going to start with my x squareds. And I've got 3. -2 plus 2 plus 7 is 7x squared. I can go with my single x's now. That's going to give me 6 plus 2 plus 56 is going to give me positive 64x. And finally, my positive 8. And that is going to be D. Number 3. Here we are going to be distributing. We have a fraction directly outside the parentheses. We're going to distribute it in. Now remember, anytime you're multiplying a fraction, you want to do fraction times fraction. You just do numerator times numerator, denominator times denominator. So I'm going to start with 3 times 2, which gives me 6. And 4 times 3 is 12, and I keep my x. Same thing on the other side. I'm going to put a 1 underneath, so I have a numerator and denominator. I'm going to go top. 3 times -5 is -15, and bottom 4. Now I do the same thing on the other side. I'm going to put a 1 underneath because I've got a fraction here. I'm going to do numerator times numerator. That's going to give me -4 over 7x. And same thing on the other side. That's going to give me positive 6 over 4. And now we can start combining like terms. Now here, I can simplify this fraction. So before I combine like terms, I want to simplify this. I know 6 over 12 is the same as 1 over 2. 9x minus 15 over 4 minus 4 over 7x. And I can also simplify 6 over 4, but because it's going to be combining with the 15 over 4, since they are the same denominators, I rather leave it as is. So that's going to be plus 6 over 4. All right, and now we can combine like terms. So I'm going to start with the 1/2 x and the negative 4 over x. Now, they are subtracting, but they do not have like denominators. So I have to make sure they have common denominators first. So I'm going to multiply all of this by 2 and all of this by 7, which is in turn going to give me 7 over 14 minus 8 over 14, which is going to give me negative 1 over 14x. So that's going to be my first term. And because that is the one attached to the x, I know that's my a. So I can start with my a is going to be b. Now I go with my other two terms, which is negative 15 over 4 plus 6 over 4. So we've got negative 15 over 4 plus 6 over 4. Well, negative 15 plus 6 is going to give me negative 9 over 4, which cannot be simplified. So that is going to be my b, which is in this case e. All right. Number 4. So for number 4, we are dividing. So here, remember, a fraction means division. So I'm going to split this up the way I know how to. I'm going to rewrite the top. And I'm going to divide each term by the 2x squared. All right, and again, when we're dividing, we divide our big numbers and we subtract our exponents if they have the same base. So here we go. We've got 10 divided by 2 is 5. We have 4 x's on top, 2 on the bottom. X's minus 2 is going to give me 2 left. I have 1 y on top and none on the bottom, so that's as if I'm doing 1 minus 0, which is still 1 y. And we move on to the next term. We have negative 4 divided by 2, which is negative 2. 2 x's on top, 2 on the bottom, they cancel out. I have no y's on the bottom, so I'm left with y3. And that is going to give me c. Perfect. Number 5. Number 5 says solve, and again we have a polynomial divided by a monomial. So again, we are going to rewrite our problem and do the same thing we did on the last one. We are going to take our first polynomial, just rewrite it, and what we're dividing by, we are going to do under each term. That way we can divide them separately and we don't get mixed up. Okay, so 12 divided by 4 is 3. I have 18 x's on top. I take 6 away. I'm left with x12. 24 divided by 4, positive 24 divided by 4 is positive 6. We cannot forget our pluses and our minuses. 12x is on top, 6 on the bottom. I'm left with 6. And 6 divided by 4 is going to give me a decimal, but I can simplify 6 over 4 because they're both even. I can divide them both by 2, and I can simplify my fraction to get me 3 over 2. Now that is a positive 3 over 2. I have 8 x's on top, 6 on the bottom. I'm left with 2 on the top. And now I'm just going to find which equation matches, and that is going to be my A. For number 5, we have again another division, but now we have a division on top of another division. So we've got divide, divide. So just like when you divide, when you have, let's say, for example, 1 over 2 divided by 6 over 4. You do keep, change, flip. We're going to be doing the same thing here. So I'm going to start by rewriting it in a way that looks like the other ones. That way we can see it a little bit better. So I've got my top. I'm going to put it in parentheses, and we're going to be dividing that by 1 over 4x. Now remember, this x is actually on top with the 1, so I can rewrite this as 1x over 4 if it makes it any easier. And now we're going to do keep, change, and flip. So I'm going to keep my x3 plus 2x2 plus 3 over 2x. I'm going to change this division to multiplication, and I'm going to flip the 1x over 4 to 4 over 1x. And now you can think of it different ways. I like to think about it, you can also think about it putting a 1 underneath, and we do top, top, bottom, bottom. But I like to think about it separately, so I like to do the division first. So I'm dividing everything by 1x, and then I multiply everything by 4. So I'm going to start with dividing everything by 1x. Now, anything divided by 1 is itself, so I really don't have to put the 1 there, but we can if we want to. So x3 minus 1x is going to leave me with x2. 2 divided by 1 is just positive 2. 2x is on top, 1 on the bottom. I'm left with 1. Now here, don't let the fraction trick you. 3 over 2 divided by 1 is still positive 3 over 2. I had 1x, took 1 away, we have none left. Now, 3 over 2. And now that we've divided everything by 4, we're going to, or divided everything by 1x, we're going to multiply everything by, which is going to leave me with x squared plus x, and we have a non-fraction, put it over 1, top, top, bottom, bottom, positive 12 over 2, which is the same as just 6. And there is our final answer. Number 6. When the binomial 18a minus 25ab6 is factored, it can be written in the form of g times 6a4 minus 7b6, which is the value of g. So we're looking for what they factored out in order to get the 6a4 minus 7b6. So I'm going to start with the 18a5 minus 21ab6. And I'm going to start by finding the multiples of 18 and 21 and see what the biggest number they have in common. Well, for 18, I've got 1 and 18, 2 and 9, 3 and 6. For 21, I've got 1, 21, and 3 and 7. Well, the biggest number they have in common is a 3. So I know my GCF should start with 3. Well, we've got a 3 here, 3 here, 3 here, 3 here. I can at least eliminate E. Now I'm going to see if they have any letters in common. Here they have 5 A's. 5. Here we've got 1 A and 6 B's. All right, let's see what they have in common. So we've got an A here, an A here. No more A's in common and no B's in common. So we can deduce that we've got an 3A in common. Now let's see if when we divide everything by 3A, we get the same answer. So I'm going to take my 18A5 minus 21 AB6, and we're going to divide everything by 3A. Well, 18 divided by 3 is 6. I started out with 5 A's, took 1 away, I'm left with A4. So far, we're looking pretty good. Negative 21 divided by 3 is negative 7. 1A, 1A cancel out. I'm left with, this should be B6. I'm left with B6, and again, this also matches. So I know my GCF should be 3A, which is B. Number 7. All right, for our number 7, it says factor 4x squared minus 15x minus 25. So I'm going to start by, let's start by listing our different ways of factoring. So first we learned GCF, learned grouping, then we learned 3 types of factoring, learned our AC method, and we also learned when A equals 1. And finally, for special products. So each one has its own requirement. For example, GCF can apply to everything. So GCF is the greatest common factor. Well, if I list the multiples 15 and 25, I can get, well, I know the multiples of 4 are 1, 4, 2, 2, 15 is 1, 15, 3, 5, 125, and 5, 5. The biggest number they have in common is 1, so I will not be doing GCF in this problem. Now we can switch over to grouping. We'll have to have 4 terms. have 4 terms there. 1, 2, 3 terms here. AC method can happen to any trinomial. We've got 1, so AC method could work. A equals 1. Our A in this case is 4. Working, and our special products, we have to have perfect squares and 2 terms with a negative in between. So although we have negatives in between, we have 25 that's a perfect square, 4 is a perfect square, 15 is not a perfect square. So we will be using our perfect square. With AC method. So let's start with AC method. So our first step is going to be to rewrite our problem. Our first step in AC method is, well, to do A times C. 4 times negative 25 gives me negative 100. Step 2, find all the multiples of negative 100. Now, when we have a negative, that means all of our terms have to be either a negative and a positive or a positive and a negative. So I'm going to start by listing everything. 2 and negative 50, positive, negative 2 and positive 50. We've got 3, 4, and 20. Whoop, not 4 and 20, 4 and 25. And positive 4 and negative 20. We've got 5 and negative 20, and negative 5 and positive. And I'm looking for what set, when added together, gets me negative 15. Well, if I just look at a couple, minus 50 is negative. I know negative 4 plus 25 is. So right off the bat, I can list all of them, but I'm looking for 5 and negative 21. So negative 15. So I'm going to rewrite, but now instead of negative 15, I'm going to do positive 5x, negative 20x. Now it's going to give me the same exact answer. Negative 25 here and minus squared. All right, and now we can actually move on to grouping. The whole reason we do this is so that we can have 1, 2, 3, 4 terms, and now I can group. Well, I'm going to start by finding the GCF of the first 2. I know the only multiple that goes into 4 and 5 is 1, but I see x is in common, so I'm going to pull out 1x. That means I divide each term by 4x squared divided by 1x is 4x. Divided by 1x is positive 5. Do the same thing on the other side. Negative 20 and negative 25 have 5 in common. I'm going to divide everything by negative 5. And that's going to leave me with positive 4x plus 5. Well, my GCFs match, or my parentheses match, so that is my first factor, 4x plus 5. And my second factor is going to be my 2 GCFs, which is 1x, or just x, minus 5. And I just find which multiples match. So I've got 4x plus 5 here, and x minus 5 here. And that is number 7. Number 8. So here I'm also factoring, but if I notice, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 terms. So I can actually go straight away into my grouping. So I'm going to start by rewriting it next so that I have some space. Now we could also look for a GCF first. List the multiples of 3, 4, 9, and 12, and they almost have a GCF, except that 3 does not go into 4. So they actually don't have a greatest common factor, but it is helpful to look. So I can go straight away into grouping. So again, I'm going to list the multiples of 3 and 4, see what they have in common. I've got a 1 and a 3 and a 1 and a 4. Only thing they have in common is a 1, so I'm going to factor out a 1. They also have an n in common. Here there's 2, here there's 1. I can have a maximum of 1 n. So essentially I'm dividing each 1n. So I've got 3n squared divided by 1n is just 3n. 4n divided by 1n is negative 4. On the other side. Multiples of 9 include 1, 9, 3, and 3. Multiples of 1, 12, 3, and 4, and 2, and 6. Biggest number they have in common is a 3, so I'm going to pull out a 3. They, however, have a n in common. I'm not pulling out an n. 9n divided by 3 is 3n, and negative 12 divided by positive 3 is negative 4. My two inside parentheses match, so that is my first factor. And my second factor are my two GCFs, which is 1n and 3, which is the same as just n plus 3. And that is going to be letter C. Number 9, the polynomials p of x equals 2x3 minus x plus 3, and q of x equals negative x squared plus 2x negative 1 are multiplied, and the result is completely simplified. Which of these are terms in the resulting polynomial? Choose all that are correct. So, keyword here, they are multiplying. So I'm going to rewrite these so that I can have them in a way that they are multiplying with each other, and I can do my rainbow or box method. Times are negative x squared plus 2x minus 1. All right, and I'm going to show you rainbow just because I am more comfortable with rainbow, but I can also show box for anybody that prefers box. All right, so we're going to start by doing 2x times negative x squared. Remember, we are just multiplying the base numbers or the whole numbers and adding the exponent. So if here I've got negative 2 times negative 1, that gives me, or positive 2 times negative 1, that gives me negative 2x to the third. To the fifth, because we've got 3 here, 2 more, we've got 5 in total. And now we move on to the next term. 2x cubed times 2x is going to give me positive 4x to the fourth. And we keep going. Negative 2x cubed. And now we move on to the next term. We've got negative x times negative x squared gives me positive x to the third. Negative x times positive 2x is negative 2x squared. Negative x minus, or times negative 1 is positive x. And then finally 3, let's use a different color. 3 times negative 1, negative x2 is negative 3x2. 3 times 2x is positive 6x, and 3 times negative 1 is negative 3. All right, and now we just start combining like terms. You can't choose anything until you've combined all your like terms. So we'll start with our highest degree to lowest degree. Well, here we've got negative 2x5, and that cannot combine with anything, so I start with my negative 2x5, which I see here. Move on to my 4x to the fourth, cannot combine with anything, so I just bring it down. Positive 4x4. I don't see here, so I keep going. I've got negative 2x3, and that can actually match with x to the third, which is going to give me negative x to the third, which I see here. And now I've got negative 2x squared minus 3x squared, which is negative 5x squared. I don't see here, so I keep going. I've got 1x plus 6 more. That gives me positive. Well, I also see that here. And 3, which is also here. Awesome. Now, you can also do this box method. I'm going to in box method. We're going to erase all of this here. And we're going to follow very with our box method. So I'm going to start by drawing. Now I've got a trinomial times a trinomial. That means I need a 3 by 3 box. So we've got 1, 3, and 1, 3. And I'm going to start by placing trinomial on one side. And I'm going to make sure to keep my negatives negative, positives positive. And again, it's the same process, just doing it. And now I'm going to multiply each one. So I know x squared times 2x is negative x to the fifth. Negative x squared times negative x is positive x to the third. and that's going to give me negative 3x to the second, positive 4x to the fourth, negative 2x squared, positive 6x, negative 2x to the third, positive x, and negative 3. And now I just combine like terms. So we start with our highest degree, negative 2x to the fifth. We've got a power of 3 here and a power of 5 by those. That's going to give me negative x to the third. Then we've got, oh, we skipped one, we skipped 4. So we're going to put this one first. Plus 4, then negative x3. Then we've got negative 2x squared and negative 3x squared, which is negative 5x squared. Combine these two to give us positive. Finally, our negative 3. And again, another same. This one, this one, this. All right, and finally, number 10. It says, look at the multiplication problem below. Write the product of the multiplication problem. So again, we have something directly outside the parentheses. We're going to share it with everything on the inside. So remember, anytime you're multiplying fractions, you're just doing numerator times numerator, denominator times denominator. A negative times a negative is a positive. 1 times 2 is 2. 3 times 5 is 15. I've got 1x here, 2 more here for a total of 3. Now, if you could simplify, we would simplify, but there isn't a number that goes to 15 evenly, so I'm going to leave it. Now I go to my next term. Now, 3 times 1, anything times 1 is itself, so I can leave the negative 3. Got 1x here, that gives me x to the second. Negative 1 over 3x, 2, put it over 1, so numerator, denominator times denominator. Negative 1 times 2, sorry, is negative times 3 is 3. And I just bring down my 1x and answer. And that is it for our 9 test review.